I thought from the Mark Harris piece in New York Magazine that you guys had it at 160 pages, and then the studio said, you guys are going to cut it down because it's going to be too long, and you said, well, let's read it together, and it turned out to be a lot faster than that. I got the idea that it was the studio threatening you with having a cut that made it fast, or did you intend it to be His Girl Friday all from the get-go?
No, it was written to be fast. I mean, when you have the guy who wrote it and you say, read it for me, and he reads it for you, and then you time it out at 2 hours, then you call the studio and say, we don't really need to worry about this. It's going to be 2 hours. Contractually, for me to have final cut, I have to deliver a movie that was 2 hours and 19 minutes or less, and I was able to come in way under the wire.
You're known as a technical director.
It's my personal point of pride.
Yeah, I was at a Q&A with Mark Romanek a few years ago, and he even suggested that you could recite what's on the back of the manual. So I'm just curious, how has the evolution of technology over the past 10 years affected your filmmaking process, and how do you think it's affected filmmaking in general?
I think that technology will never make movies better. Technology has never allowed a movie to be made any faster. It's allowed the people who are making movies to iterate faster so that you can have more options. And as we all know, sometimes more options is great, and sometimes more options is just more indecision and more procrastination. So, I think that technology, obviously movies have changed, and how we make movies has changed radically, in the last 10 years. I'm able to be in 2 and 3 different places at once. I have dailies of, I have video tests of rehearsals that are happening in Uppsala right now that are being downloaded so that I can look at them when I go back to the hotel room, so I can say, this is how I want my parade floats to appear in a scene that we'll shoot on Sunday morning. For instance, in this movie, the Henley Regatta sequence we put that to the end. We had to shoot that on July 4th, and we had to have a movie locked and loaded and ready to be made prints of at the end of August. So we had like 4 or 5 weeks to do about, probably 100 CG environment shots, and it was only possible because of the way we were able to shoot on the Red, the way we were able to take that data and we were able to ship it to LA, and people started tracking backgrounds, and we were able to hit the ground running. So it can be a great tool, just like Facebook. It can be an incredibly powerful way to reconnect or connect, and it can also be a gigantic waste of time. But no more so, quite honestly, than I look at my 16-year-old and she can disappear for hours on end in her Facebook world, but I did the same thing, quite honestly, with Gilligan's Island. So, who am I to judge?
The way the script was constructed, the backward and forward, was that something, I actually wanted David to talk about that. Was that the way it was originally written? Did you tamper with that?
No, that was the way it was originally written. Once research revealed that 2 separate lawsuits were brought against Facebook at roughly the same time. The defendant, the plaintiffs, the witnesses, they all came into the deposition rooms. They all swore out an oath. And what we ended up with were 3 very different versions of a story. And instead of choosing one and deciding that one's the truth, I'm going to run with that, or choosing one and deciding that one's the sexiest, I'm going to run with that. What I really liked was that there were 3 different versions of the story, that there was Rashomon, and that after, it didn't come to me instantly. There was a period of climbing the walls and pacing around like there always is. But I came up with the structure of the deposition rooms, and that everything was going to come out of that, which would give everyone an ability to say, that's not true, that's not what happened, and would also have the added benefit of putting Mark just a few feet away from his accusers. And when we go to those deposition rooms, Mark's actually an underdog in there. He's got to defend himself against a team of very high-priced lawyers, who were sitting next to these young Kennedys and that kind of thing. So, but the structure worked mostly for the Rashomon quality, right?
Yes.
Thank you. I was wondering if you know if Larry Summers is coming tonight, and also, how did you cast that role? It's amazing.
I loved the Larry Summers scene when I read it the first time, because I loved the fact that here were these two guys who were coming, and it was a little bit more. In its first incarnation, it was a little bit more of them hitting a brick wall with Larry Summers, and we sort of retempered the ending a little bit so that I mean, as it was described to Aaron, and as Aaron described it to me, the Winklevi went to meet with Larry, and Larry kind of said, "This couldn't be less interesting to me, and I cannot imagine myself involving this office in sorting this problem out. By all means, have at it in the courts of law, but I can't get involved." And I thought it was such a great idea of, like, finally, you get to go behind the curtain and meet the wizard, and the wizard is supposed to sort the whole thing out, and he kind of goes, "This sounds a little dull. This just doesn't sound interesting at all, and I have so many other things that are, fighting for my attention." So I was friends with Douglas Urbanski, who is, I know him as Gary Oldman's manager, and I thought of him to play Larry Summers, and I sent him the script, and he liked it very much, and he said, I sort of look a little bit like him, and again, because I wasn't trying to find people who were the same height and weight or anything, and so I looked him up on the internet, and he does look a little bit like him.
After 2 hours of Trent Reznor's score, it's a little jarring to hear the Beatles, which is a sentence I thought I would never say. I'm wondering why that song was chosen, and also why Reznor's music was used throughout the movie in general. I guess it would be to David.
I wanted to work with Trent, and we had temped a lot of the movie with Nine Inch Nails' Ghosts, which was a sort of a conceptual studio album that they did as a, they did in like 2 weeks or something, and we had temped a lot of the movie with that, and I remember when we were shooting the final deposition scene that I actually we were at Milton Academy, weren't we, Aaron? And I was listening. My iPod had, my iPhone had a Beatles compilation on it, and I heard the song, and I thought, we might be able to get away with this. And when we were shooting the depositions, I played it for Jesse, and Jesse nodded his head, which is, approval, and he liked the idea of it. He kind of said, okay, and then when we tested it, when we kind of laid it up underneath. It's funny because we didn't lay it under the scene and then play just the scene. We laid it up under the scene, and then we played the whole movie, and we watched it. And I kind of remember going, "Yeah, I think that's going to work." I could be wrong, but I'm sure you'll tell me.